Now, a bizarre incident to tell you about before President Trump and the president of the Philippines sat down for a meeting in Manila. Watch this.
The media was a little bit late, and you actually missed the best part of the president's statement. I've really enjoyed being here. The weather is always good. Today it's pretty good. But one thing about the Philippines, eventually it gets good no matter what. But we very much appreciate the great treatment you've given. I thought last night's event was fantastic.
We're not answering any. This is not the press statement. We are in a bilateral meeting. Maybe the press conference would follow.
Thank you very much.
Meantime, Trump critics back at home are calling out the president for not taking a tougher stand on human rights with Duterte. But just a short while ago, the two leaders issued a joint statement saying they will continue to work on programs that protect human rights. Joining us now to break all this down, former Senior Director of Middle Eastern Affairs at the National Security Council, Michael Singh. He is also Managing Director of the Washington Institute. People who, don't travel with presidential pools might not have thought that video was all that weird, with a member of the Filipino government apparently blocking the camera after giving a thumbs up sign to somebody. But it sure appeared that he was trying to block the American press view of the two presidents sitting there together. And then when they start shouting questions at Duterte, he says, "No, we're not going to answer any questions right now. This is not a press conference." Your top of the head thoughts, Michael?
Well, John, it's in the Philippines, they have a vibrant press. They have a lot of issues with civil liberties. But President Duterte especially has had a rocky relationship with the press. There's been a lot of issues over human rights. And so it's not surprising to see that they might be trying to restrict access. It's hard to know exactly what is going on in that particular circumstance. But we saw this in China, too, for example, John, where the Chinese tried to restrict the American press in terms of the questions they could ask. And so this isn't unusual, and usually what it takes is for the White House or someone in the president's traveling party to stand up for that press pool. President
Trump has said, it's that the two of them, he and President Duterte, have had a great relationship. And I suppose when you compare it to the one that Duterte had with President Obama, that's a monumental turnaround.
Well, that's right, John. This has been a very strained relationship in recent years, largely because of what's been happening in the Philippines itself. There have been these accusations of extrajudicial killings by President Duterte, which the Obama administration strongly criticized. And then, of course, President Duterte himself of the Philippines is notoriously anti-American and has talked about creating a total separation between the U.S. and Philippines, something he said in Beijing, no less.
So what does an American leader have to do? How do you handle an anti-American leader of one of our allies?
Well, it's a classic dilemma in foreign policy, John, trying to balance the human rights concerns with the strategic concerns. You can't ignore the human rights concerns, especially because we feel some guilt by association when it's an ally. But if you look at what the Trump administration is dealing with in Asia, trying to build this network of alliances to deal with China, to deal with North Korea, to see the military-to-military cooperation deteriorate between the U.S. and Philippines is obviously very concerning. And so the temptation is always to prioritize those strategic concerns, John. But I think that you neglect human rights really at your own peril, because in the long run, allies who are turbulent internally or who don't sort of respect rule of law at home are rarely very good allies for the United States.
So you would recommend to the president that he lean on Duterte pretty hard about human rights, and especially about these extrajudicial killings?
Well, it's important that he do so, that we raise these issues, not just with the Philippines, but frankly with any allies who are having issues with this. You look at Turkey, you look at Egypt, for example. And it's vital, John, that the president himself do it, because that will then sort of empower and give credence to efforts by people like the Secretary of State or lower level officials. And in the long run, I think it's good and healthy for the alliance, because ultimately those strategic issues will suffer because of internal problems in these countries. And so it's not really the trade-off maybe that it seems.
When the press was shouting questions at President Duterte, he retorted that you are all spies. And he seemed to be pretty serious about it. So, yeah, that's the kind of relationship he has with the press. Michael Singh. Michael, thank you.
Thank you, John.